Okay, so we are going to go over your Unit 5 test review. Your test will be tomorrow, so make sure you get that done within the day, okay? You got that one day to take the test, okay? And this is the end of the 9 weeks, so you definitely want to make sure you get the test done, okay? So, we're going to go over a few key things before we get started, okay? So, to do most of these problems, you will follow these 3 steps, okay? So, the first thing, you will find the correct formula, okay? And the formula will be on the formula chart, okay? So, in your folder, there will be a formula chart for you to use. It's the same formula chart that you've been using this whole time when you've been doing these problems. So, just make sure you have that formula chart handy while you're taking your test, okay? Second thing is to plug in appropriate numbers. If you have to find missing measurements to plug in those numbers, then make sure you do that first so that way you can have the right numbers in the right spot. So it has to be the right numbers. And then once you've done that, then you just go ahead and solve. A couple more things I want to go over before we get started is the radius and the diameter, the difference between the two. Okay, so this one, okay, where it goes halfway, that will be the radius, and it's represented by a lowercase r, and that is half of the diameter. So, for example, if we are given a circle with a radius of 3 and we want to find the diameter, well, being that the radius is half the diameter, we would just multiply by 2 to get the diameter, okay? And so if the radius is 3, then the diameter will be 3 times 2, which is 6. Okay, now the diameter is when it goes all the way through. Okay, the way I remember that is the diameter has more letters in it, so that's the one that goes all the way. Okay, and that's represented by lowercase d, and that is twice the radius, so that's double the radius. So for example, if you have a diameter of 4 and you want to find the radius, well, the radius is half the diameter, so you would just do 4 divided by 2, and you would have a radius of 2. Now, in your formula chart, okay, the area for a circle is pi, right? This symbol pi, which is always 3.14. R, which is the radius, squared. So remember, squared is not multiplying by 2, okay? It is multiplying the radius, or whatever the number is here, by itself twice. That's what the exponent says. So you can just write it out as pi times r times r. Okay, all right, we'll get started. Number 1 says Amanda has a pool in her backyard. The circumference of the pool is 16 pi feet. Which measurement is closest to the area of the pool in square feet? Okay, so we're definitely going to use these numbers. All right, so we have a circumference that is 16 pi feet, okay? So right now this is in terms of pi because it has the pi there. But if we look at the formulas for a circumference, there are 2 formulas on a formula chart. You have 2 pi r and you have pi times d, okay? So we want to figure out, okay, which one is this? Would this be 2 pi r or pi times d, even though they're technically the same, okay? So I would say that this one represents, okay, circumference of pi times d, because I just have a pi and I have a number. So I would assume that this 16 has to be the diameter, okay, because it's there with the pi. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the diameter, okay. All right. So we have the circumference. What they want us to do is they want us to find the area given the circumference. So they want to find the area. So the first thing, or the main thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the radius first. Okay, so once I find the radius, then I'm going to go ahead and plug that into what I want, which is the area. Okay, but I'm going to try and find the radius given this here. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. Okay, so this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the radius first using this, and then I'm going to plug that into the area for the circle, and I should get my answer. So, being that this is the diameter, I got to find the radius. Remember, the radius is half the diameter, so what I'm going to have to do is just divide this number that's with pi by 2 to find the radius. So, it's going to be 16, that's the diameter, and divide by 2 to get the radius. Well, 16 divided by 2 is 8. So 8 is your radius. Okay, the radius, I say in class, that's the magic number. Usually you'll find that if you want to find something, you'll find that first and then plug it into whatever you want. You want the area. So now that I have the radius, I'm going to plug this into the formula for the area of a circle, and your formula chart says that the area of a circle is A equals pi r squared. Remember, that's not a regular 2, that's a square, that's an exponent. So now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. So A equals pi, well, pi is always 3.14. I'm going to open up for the radius. And the radius is 8, so I'm going to put the 8 where the r is, and then I'm going to put squared. Okay, so you just plug in your numbers as you see it. Then you're going to go ahead and solve. So A equals, I'm going to leave the 3.14 for now, and instead I'm going to go ahead and take care of my 8 squared. So make sure you always take care of this part first. Okay, take care of your exponent, because exponents come before your multiplication. If you do your multiplication where you do 3.14 times 8 first, you're going to get it wrong. So make sure you take care of the number and the exponent first. Okay, so let's find out what 8 squared is. Well, that's just multiplying 8 by itself. So it's going to look like this. 8 and then times 8. When I put parentheses there with no operation in between, make sure you know that is multiplication. Okay, so pretty much this whole thing is multiplication because there's no signs in between. All right, so A equals, you still have your 3.14. Then you got to figure out what is 8 times 8, which is 8 squared, and that is 64. Okay, and if you multiply that out, you will get your answer, which is 200.96, and then the units will be feet. And then it'll be squared because it is the area. And so that is your answer. Number 2, the circle below has a circumference of 50.24 inches. Which equation could be used to find r, the radius, in inches? Okay, so you have the circumference, so whatever you have, that's what you're going to start with. So if you have the circumference, you're going to find the area for the circumference because that's what you have. So the formula on your formula chart says that the circumference is, and we're going to do 2 pi r. Remember, you have two choices. You have 2 pi r, or you can use pi times d. Technically, they are the same. But usually I say, well, if you're trying to look for the radius, or if you have the radius, you want to use the one that has r in it. If you have the diameter, you would use the one that has a d in it, even though they'll both give you the same answer according to their formula. So let's just go ahead and plug in what we have, because that's usually our next step, right? I have the circumference. They said it was 50.24. So where the c is, I'm going to put 50.24. Okay, I got the 2 pi and r. Now, if you look at the answer choices, they're not asking you to solve it. They're just trying to see, okay, which one set it up correctly. Well, you're just going to look and see which one has exactly what you have, and that'll be D. Okay, so number 3 says that the city is making a building that has the shapes and measures shown below. Which area is closest to the area of the building in square meters? Make sure you use 3.14 for pi. Okay, so when we're given, this is a composite figure because it's made of 2 or more figures put together. Okay, when you're given that, your main thing that you want to do is find the area of each shape. Okay, assuming that it's broken up correctly into shapes that you know. and then you're going to either add them together or subtract those areas, okay? Now, if you want all of the shapes, then what you would do after you find the areas for each is you would add them together. Now, if you don't want some of the shapes, you would subtract those areas, okay? But we want all of them, okay? So it didn't say that it didn't want anything. You want all of them then. So you're going to add the areas after you find it, okay? So I'll just say, make this note that I'm going to add because I want all shapes. So I'm going to add their areas together after I find it. So let's just find out what these shapes are. Okay, so I don't have to break this any further because I know what all of these shapes are. So this one here is a triangle. Okay, and the formula for the area of a triangle, your formula chart should say A equals half times base times height, but I usually have students rewrite it as the base times height divided by 2, and that's the same thing, okay, because multiplying by half is the same as dividing by 2, okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and just name the rest of these. This right here, this shape, is a rectangle, okay? Once I know what it is, I'm going to find the formula on the formula chart, and your formula chart says that the formula for the area of a rectangle is A equals base times height. Okay, and then this shape right here, you must know, okay? You must know for yourself. This is called a quarter circle, okay? Basically, right, you would have a circle, and quarter means it's going to be divided in 4, and you just want 1. And so these two shapes are the same. One piece of this is this, okay? So this is called a quarter circle. Okay, a fourth of a circle. And so you must know the formula for the quarter circle because it is not on your formula chart. So basically, you take the circle and you divide it by 4. That's what I did up here. And so I'll just write down that it is going to be whatever the formula for the circle is, and then make sure that I divide by 4 when I'm done. Okay, so this one's not on a formula chart, so you must know what it is. So the formula for a quarter circle is A equals pi r squared, which is the formula for the circle, and then just make sure you divide by 4 because you have a fourth of it, and that is the formula for the quarter circle. Okay. All right, so now you just want to make sure, okay, that you have all the measurements that you need, all right? So we need the base of the triangle, so we have to find that out, all right? You also need the height of the rectangle, and you need the radius of the quarter circle. Okay, so find everything you need before you plug anything in. Make sure you have everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the missing measurements. So usually your opposite sides are congruent, and congruent means that they are equal. So if this side of this rectangle is 13, then that means that this side is also 13, okay? Because they're congruent to each other. All right? Okay. Now, you have to know what this is. This is a quarter circle. And so the quarter circle is just full of the radius, okay? So for every distance in a quarter circle, it is a radius, okay? So I'll write this down that this is a radius. This is a radius. This is a radius. This distance is a radius. The whole thing is a radius. And so if this is 4 and that's the radius, and this is also the radius, then this must also be 4. Okay, because everything in a quarter circle, all those distances are the radius. Okay, and if this side is 4, remember I said the opposite is congruent, so this must also be 4 meters. Okay, and then if this is 4, which is the radius, and this is 4, then that means this piece right here is also 4 meters. Okay, because remember everything in the quarter circle is the radius, right? So it goes from here to here, here to here. Okay, it never goes all the way if you take a piece. All right. So it looks like you have everything you need. Okay, so we want to find the base of the triangle. Okay, the base, the whole base of the triangle. Well, it's not just 13 because 13 is just a piece of it. It's not just 4 either because that's just a piece of the base as well. So you need the whole base. So what you would have to do is you would have to add those two pieces together because you want the whole thing. So the base of this triangle you'd have to get by adding this piece plus this piece. Okay, so you'd be adding 13 plus 4 to get the base, which would be 17. Okay, so the base of your triangle, make sure you know that you're going to get both those pieces, is 17. So where the base is, I'm going to plug in A equals the base times the height. So the base is 17 times the height. Okay, the height of the triangle, they said, is 11. So I'm going to put 11 where the height is. And then don't forget that the triangle must divide by 2 using this formula. Okay, so all I did was plug that in. All right, then you just keep on solving. Okay, so we always take care of the top first. So that is 17 times 11 because there's nothing in between. So I assume that's multiplication. And you will get 187 for the top. Okay, still have to divide by 2. And so once you do 187 divided by 2, you will get 93.5 meters squared. Okay, and I'm going to circle that because I'm going to add this to all of my areas because I want all these shapes together. Okay, so now I'm going to do my rectangle. So A equals, let's find the base of the rectangle. The base is 13, so I'm going to put the 13 where the base is. The height of just the rectangle is 4. Okay, and that's all for the formula, so I just got to solve this. 13 times 4 is 52. Okay, and I'm going to circle that because that's part of what I'm going to add later. And then I'm going to find the area of the quarter circle by using this formula. So A equals pi, which is always 3.14, times the radius. The radius we found out is 4. It's pretty much the number that's given. Squared divided by 4. Okay, then you just keep on solving. A equals, remember I told you to take care of the 4 squared first. Always take care of the squared first. So leave 3.14 for now. And then 4 squared is the same as 4 multiplied by itself. So 4 times 4. Okay, divide by 4 because it is a quarter circle. Keep going. A equals 3.14. And then 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, keep going. A equals, we always take care of the top first, so 3.14 times 16 is going to be 50.24. And then don't forget, you must still divide by 4 because it is a quarter circle. And so once you do that, you should get to your answer, which is 12.56 meters squared. Okay, and that is the area of the quarter circle only. Okay, but you want the whole thing, all of them. Okay, so you're going to add all your numbers together that you got for your area. So it's going to be, you're going to be adding, I'll add it right here. It's going to be 93.5 plus 52. Make sure you line up your decimals. Okay, the decimal will be behind the whole number. Plus 12.56. Okay, I'll just put zeros here just to fill up the gaps. Okay, and you will get an answer of 158.06 meters. Number 4, what is the area of the circle shown below? The area. So we want to find the formula for the area of a circle. So your formula chart says A equals pi r squared for the area. Okay, so this means we must have the radius. Well, right now, this is the diameter because it goes all the way. We want the radius. So you have to, well, let me write this down. Okay, so this is the diameter. I want the radius for the formula because it has to be. Okay, because this one only has one formula for the area, for the circle. And so remember, if I want the radius, I have to divide this by 2. So I'm going to take this, what they gave me, find the radius by dividing by 2 because the radius is half. So the radius is 6. Okay, now I can do my formula. Pi is always 3.14. The radius we just found out is 6. And then we have our squared. So you just keep on solving. Okay, take care of this first. So leave your 3.14 for now. And do 6 squared, which is 6 multiplied by itself. Okay, so 6 times 6. Okay. A equals 6 times 6, which is 36. Okay, and then you keep going. So A equals 113.04. Then it's going to be meters squared or square meters. Okay, those are the same thing. Okay. Okay, so the next one says that Benjamin needs to create a design that is in the shape of a semicircle. Okay, this right here, it is a semicircle. Semicircle means half of a circle. Okay, so I will write that actually. So semi means half. So it's not the same as a quarter circle, which would be a fourth. All right. What is the area of the design? Use 3.14 for pi and round your answer to the nearest hundredth of a square foot. Okay, so this, it is a semicircle, okay, because you basically took the circle and broke it in half and you took one piece. Okay, so you must also know the formula for this shape because it's not on your formula chart. So remember, semi means half, and so that basically means instead of dividing by 4 for the quarter circle, this one's half, and so you would just divide by 2 instead of the 4 like we did last time. Okay, so you must know this because it's not on your formula chart. The semicircle would be A equals the formula for a circle, which is pi r squared, and then make sure you divide by 2 because it's half of the circle. So now you're going to plug in what you have. Okay, pi, which is always 3.14, times the radius. Well, this is the radius, so that's good. You get to plug it in the way it is, so 2.5. And then squared. Don't forget you're going to divide by 2 because it's half of a circle. Okay, you would keep going. Take care of this first. So leave the 3.14 for now. Take care of 2.5 squared, which is 2.5 multiplied by itself. So 2.5 times 2.5. Messed up a little bit there. And then divide by 2. Okay, you would keep going. A equals 3.14, and then 2.5 times 2.5 will give you 6.25. Okay, and then you would divide by 2 because it is half of the circle. You keep going by taking care of the top first, so that would be 3.14 times 6.25, which is 19.625. Okay, then you still have to divide by 2 because it's a half a circle. So you will get A equals, once you divide these two, it would be 9.8135. Okay, if we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, okay, we would, well, let me put the units here, feet, and then squared because it's the area. Okay, so technically this is your answer. If we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, like it says, okay, find out the hundredths place. So this is tenths, and then hundredths is always the second number that's behind the decimal. Okay, so you want to see whether the hundredths place is going to go up or stay the same. So you look behind it. Well, that is a 3, so the 3 is not big enough to change this into a 2. So the 1 is going to stay the same. So if I was rounding this correctly to the nearest hundredth, then it will be 9.81, okay? Because the 1 didn't change because the 3 was not big enough. It has to be 5 or bigger behind there, okay? But I don't see 9.81 all by itself, so I think it was supposed to round to the nearest thousandths, okay? So if I was doing that, I would look for the thousands place. So this tenths, hundred, thousandths, underline that. See what happens. I'm sorry, this should have been 2.5. Okay, 2.5, okay, so this should have been 2.5. Okay, all right. So if I was doing that, so this is a 2, I would look behind there and see, okay, that's big enough to change it into a 3, and so the answer would be 9.81, and then it would change into a 3 feet squared, okay? And that would be rounding to the nearest thousandths. So, but anyway, my closest answer anyway was still A. Number 6 says, Emily wants to cover her kitchen floor with ceramic tile. The diagram below shows the layout of her kitchen. What is the area of the kitchen floor in square feet that will be covered with ceramic tile? So she's only going to cover her kitchen floor with ceramic tile. Okay, so this outside rectangle is the kitchen floor because the inside says it is an island, and basically that's just a space that's taken up with something else. Okay, so she's only going to put ceramic tile around the kitchen floor. I don't want to put it on this piece. And so instead of me adding my areas once I find them, I'm going to subtract. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. So that way I don't forget what I'm doing when I'm done finding my areas. So I'm subtracting because I only want kitchen floor, not island. Okay, so if you don't want something, that means you would subtract instead of adding. Okay, all right. So first thing you have to do is find the areas of both shapes. They are both a rectangle. So this one, which is a rectangle, I'll just say it is a big rectangle. This is the big rectangle that I'm going to do first. It is A equals base times height. Okay, so A equals the base. Okay, so the base is 18. And the height of the rectangle, how tall it is 22. Okay, and so you just solve it. You would do 18 times 22, and you will get 396 feet squared because it is the area. Okay, then you got to do the area of the small rectangle because you do have two shapes. Okay, so this is also a rectangle, and we are going to do the small one. Okay, so the formula for rectangle is base times height according to your formula chart. So A equals the base, which is 3, and the height of the small one, which is 5. So you would do 3 times 5, and you would get 15 feet squared. Okay, and then once you are finished, you remember you want to subtract because you didn't want the island, you just want the outer piece, and so you will do 396 minus 15, and you will get your answer, which is 381 feet squared, okay, or squared feet, which is the same. Okay. Number 7. Amanda wants to lay new carpet in the entrance and main room of her house as shown. The carpet Amanda selected sells for $1.50 a square foot. How much will it cost Amanda to carpet the house? Okay, so you got to realize that this is not a normal shape, so you must break it down first, okay? Because this shape is not on your formula chart, so you have to break it up into shapes that you know, okay? So that's your first step whenever you have a shape that is not normal, okay? So you break it however you see it, and if you do it correctly, you should still get the right answer. So if I want to, I can break it this way and just say, okay, I have two rectangles, or I can break it this way and say I have two rectangles. So I'm going to choose to break it this way, but it doesn't matter which way you break it as long as you do it right. Okay, so after you've broken it and you can definitely see what shapes that they are, then you're done breaking it then. Okay, so if you can name these shapes, then you're done breaking it. Now you're going to find your missing measurements. Okay, so remember the opposite sides are congruent, so I have 6.5 here, so if that's 6.5, then this length is also 6.5, so I'm going to write that down, 6.5, okay? And if this is 3, that means the opposite side is also 3, so I'm going to write that down. Usually I circle it so that way I know I made that, and it wasn't already there, okay? All right, so you have 10 here. So you look on the opposite side, that must also be 10. So I'm going to write that down. I have 13. And so this whole side must also be 13. So if you want to find this piece, right? Well, this is already 6.5 and you want the whole thing to be 13. So I pretty much would do 13 minus 6.5. And I'm going to get that this piece, this half right here, is also 6.5. I can make sure by adding them to see if I really do get 13 and that they're the same, okay? So now that you have everything, you're just going to plug in your formulas, okay? So I'm going to do, we have the rectangle. This is a rectangle. Okay, and I'm just going to say this is the big rectangle that I'm going to do, okay? The formula for a rectangle is A equals base times height. So the base of the rectangle is the whole thing. You're not going to just take piece or a piece of that. You want the whole thing. The whole thing was 13. The height of your rectangle is 10. Okay, and then you would just multiply these two, and 13 times 10 is 100 and, I'm sorry, this is not 10. Okay, let me tell you why it's not 10. That was my mistake. Okay, so, well, this whole spot is 10. That's what it says. This piece is 3. So I have to find out, okay, what does this have to be in order for this whole thing to be 10? Okay, well, 10 minus this piece, which is 3, is 7. Okay, so that means this is actually 7 for the height. Okay, because it's the same as that. So make sure